Hello and welcome to the Daft Souls podcast. I can't remember what episode number it is, but that doesn't matter because they're all based on numbers anyway. And I'm joined by Keza McDonald.
Hello.
And Miss Twitgera, Emily Guerra. How you doing?
Hello. Guerra.
Guerra.
Yeah.
Twit
Did I
Guerra.
say Guerra?
Guerra. Yeah,
Guerra. Sorry.
right.
Emily Guerra.
Thank you.
Yes. Got it right.
Is Emily new to the podcast?
It's the first time she's been on as a guest, but it's lovely to have you here. So why don't you kick us off? What have you been playing recently?
Actually, I've been playing a lot of board games. I've taken this detour from doing basically 24-hour League of Legends, which is the best game ever created. I say to the Dota player.
I'm an ex-Dota player.
Yeah,
I kind of
Reformed. Dota, that's the word.
It gets hard. I still have
Recovering.
Do you have the shakes?
I still have dudes knocking on the door being like, hey, you coming to play some Dota? And I'm like, no. I think they've all worked out now because it's been about a month and a half of me not playing any Dota that I'm not playing. But you still have people knocking around and be like, hey, why aren't you coming and play some Dota? And be like, I'm just not doing it right now. But yeah, no, League of Legends is rubbish. Carry on.
Fuck you. I've taken a slight detour into sort of real life social gaming, which is a strange experience after years of just sitting in my living room with my dog. But no, it's nice. It feels sort of like going back to the 80s. Like I've been yesterday I played, we just got a copy of this board game called Dead of Winter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Lucky dog.
I know.
We actually played that when we were out in Gen Con.
Nice.
And we really liked it, but yeah, they kind of annoyed us.
Why is that?
No, they didn't really annoy us. It was just one of those annoying things in the fact that, actually, if you want to know a lot about this, we did this on a recent Shut Up, Sit Down podcast, but they were like, oh, we love your stuff, guys. And we're like, wicked, can we have a copy of Dead of Winter? Like, why haven't you sent us one? They're like, oh, yeah, well, we haven't got enough copies to sell, so there's no point giving you one because you'll just make people want it and they won't be able to buy it.
Who do they think they are?
Amazing logic.
It's just, it makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, it's like, oh damn, that means because we're like the press, it's harder to get it than it would be. I don't know. It makes it like
That's amusing.
rather than the opposite when there's like you can sell infinite number of games. Of course,
This is it. Obviously the capitalism's predicated on selling as much of everything as you can. The idea is, we don't have enough. You don't want to disappoint people.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like
that's wonderful.
They already have waiting lists because they only do print runs of like a really popular board game. Have a print run of like 10,000 copies, and then if they sell all of them, they'd be like, oh, maybe do another run of 5,000? Is that too much?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than having like loads of them.
I love that though. I love that it's like, if you talk about indie gaming, I mean, this is indie gaming. You know, this is the absolute core of just guys who got together and had a damn good idea and don't really know how to market things remotely.
And even on the pretense scale of things, it's amazing because it means if you can buy games that are then like out of print for like 20 years.
Yeah.
You can be like,
that's nice.
Oh yeah, I've got a copy of this. Where did you get this from?
This is like,
Hello, eBay.
it's like gaming's equivalent of collecting vinyl records.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But the thing is, they're vinyl records you can actually play with.
That is true. Well, vinyl records you can technically play.
But Dead of Winter's really cool because it is like a bit like it's a bit like Walking Dead style. Mm-hmm. In the fact that you have got the kind of, it's really nice in the way it basically has like a nice narrative element where every time it's your turn, the player before you, it's part of this Crossroads series, and they're making 3 games, Crossroads, and each one you take a card when it's the person in front of you's go, and you read just the top bit, and it'll tell you like if this, and it means if it's like something like if this character is one of the characters that's currently in play, or if this character during their turn does this, like if they go to the police station. But then you don't tell them what it says, and you just put it down. And then you just wait, and if something happens during that turn that fits the criteria in the card, you go, oh, wait, and then you stop, and then you read the card. And it has these like mini story events that happen. And it's like one of the things we have to resist temptation to read them all before you need to.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you don't need to, you can just put them back in the deck and you use it another time. But some of the stories are so dark and so like...
No, it has this fantastic like series of subplots like that. And I mean, it's one of the things that has kind of... I mean, in a lot of ways, it's ruined normal gaming for me. like getting into this whole board game thing, because I find the stories that are offered in board games, there's much more variety in terms of what you kind of fall into. You know,
they're flexible too, right?
It's very, very flexible, and you don't really find that too often. And like I spent a long time being like, I am a narrative gamer. and I like stories in games, and I love that. But I think in a lot of ways, in my experience of playing like normal video games, it just works so much better when you're in a room with other people and you can kind of just deal with it yourself. Don't worry about any kind of system mechanics or anything. Just, traditional video games are great, but if you want a story, you tell it between each other.
And the stories it unfolds are really nice in the fact that it has that classic thing like, as with a lot of these games that I love, like stuff like The Resistance, Avalon, and Werewolf, and Battlestar, like it has this sort of, there is a chance, and there's only a 50% chance that one of the people in the game is a betrayer. And it basically means that they've got an agenda which involves everybody else being killed or everyone else being screwed up, basically.
But you don't tell anybody.
But you don't tell anyone. It means you have this thing of like the whole game, you're just wondering if there's somebody maybe that's not helping as much as they should be.
And I've never had that kind of fear, if you even want to call it that.
And you don't even know if there definitely is a betrayer, but might be.
You don't know anything really. It's just, you know how the game works, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you know what your role is, and that's it.
But it comes out really nicely, doesn't it? Because everyone else who isn't even if you're not a betrayer, everyone has their own criteria for what their success is. So you're all working towards one big thing of like, the game we play, it's like we all have to like get enough food to go and find a new colony, go and find a new place to stay.
In mine, it was you have to get enough medicine to create the antidote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, everyone also has their own side thing that they have to do. And if you don't do that, then you lose the game. Even if the team win, you lose. And so it means like even when you think you might have a betrayer, like it's not like that the obvious thing in most games where it's like, well, who's the bad guy? And it being like they're acting strange, it's them. Because everyone's acting a bit strange. Like I had this thing on the last few turns where everyone was just looking at me as to go, what are you doing? Because I just kept going off like while everyone else was trying to help people, I was like barricading up the building, and it's like, we don't need more barricades. And I'm like, yes, we do. And everyone's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And it just breeds this amazing sense of paranoia.
Yeah. And like I said, you don't really feel that in other multiplayer games. There are a lot of, one thing that I very much noticed when I went to Gamescom a few weeks back was that there's this kind of resurgence of this kind of old school GM moderated style cooperative game. Yeah. So you have, Evolve, you have Fable. It's this strange kind of push in this direction. And it's really good to see, but I think that if anything, it kind of underlines the fact that board games are this platform for innovation. And it's the main platform for innovation, I would argue.
I think so at the moment.
I spoke to a few people at Gamescom about that.
Yeah.
Particularly BioWare with Shadow Realm, which is their new 4 versus 1 thing where one of the persons is the dungeon master basically and the other's not. And I just kind of asked a few people, why is this happening now? It's really strange. This 4 versus 1 thing's coming up, and apparently the BioWare chap, Jeff, who I talked to, was like, well, in the 80s when we all started making games, we all thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could make a Dungeons and Dragons, but that was, interactive. And back then the tech, you just couldn't do it. You couldn't have a dungeon master. Like, there was no way you could have done it. Yeah. Unless it was literally like BBSs, which people used to use just text, email each other. So he's like, well, now we're thinking maybe the technology can handle it. I'm not convinced the technology can handle it though, because you still have to have rules. Like the dungeon master can place enemies, but that's not really being a dungeon master, is it?
That's the thing. No, it's
it's not really shaping the story or shaping what's going on. It's just filling in the gaps where the monsters should be, really.
It's funny, and it's something I talk about a lot, but it seems like games are still desperately trying to catch up to the peak they reached in the late 1990s of having these games that were mostly just text.
Planescape and Fallout.
Yeah, they were just able to conjure these in. I know, I'm not going to talk about them again, but just the way they could do all this stuff. It's like...
Yeah, and it's funny because there was that back then there was this push towards being like pen and paper RPGs, and then that kind of went away and everyone tried starting to be like movies instead. And now it's coming back where it's like, maybe we should try and be like pen and paper RPGs.
They're trying to do both, aren't they?
Yeah, kind of at the same time. It's really strange. Gamescom was good this year. I thought it was a good one.
I didn't go, and actually there's we might as well ask you this question now. Somebody's asking, have you seen Bloodborne?
Oh yes,
because I get so many questions about Bloodborne, and I know fucking nothing about it.
Oh man, I played it.
That much,
it was good.
Please tell me about it.
So not to be a total dick about it, but Dark Souls 2 wasn't quite the same.
Well, I thought it was a bit weak.
There was just something about it was one of those games that I didn't want to say that, because I mean, by comparison to other games, it was still amazing, but by comparison to Dark Souls, there was just something missing. And what I thought was missing from it was this Miyazaki element of dignity and majesty. There's a great quote from Miyazaki when he talks about the undead dragon in Dark Souls, and one of his designers came up and gave him a sketch of it, and it was all like maggots and dripping flesh and stuff, and he gave it back. He says, "It's not good enough. Can't you try to convey the sad dignity of a once magnificent beast condemned to endless and possibly to endless and irreversible ruin?"
It must be a nightmare of a boss.
Yeah.
You'd be like, "Yeah, all right, Miyazaki,
I'll just do the profound sadness of a magnificent beast doomed to endless ruin. That's
what,
fine.
you want more like grey colouring in? Or what?
So
more grey?
But that to me is just that absolutely that embodies the demons, because I'm a Demon Souls person. Really, I love Dark as well. But Demons was my game. I loved it. And the thing about those enemies especially, where they just had this dignity and this majesty. And in Dark Souls 2, it was kind of missing, because it would be like, oh, here's a giant that rips off its arm. Here's a serpent woman. Here's a really big man with a sword. Here's a really big man with an axe. And none of them really had that. You know when Gaping Dragon turns up and your jaw hits the floor, you're like, what the fuck even is that? That's what Bloodborne has. It has the what the fuck is even this? I don't even understand what the noise, especially the sound design, is excellent in Bloodborne. Combat wise, it's a bit different from Souls. Sorry, I'm going to go on about this in slight detail.
No, do. I honestly, I don't know anything about it. I should have watched videos maybe, but...
So it's you're a demon hunter in it, basically. So, but a lot of the stuff is similar to Souls. Like the animations are kind of borrowed from Souls. Mm-hmm. The sound design is exceptional. The level they've shown so far is set in a kind of fucked up Edinburgh. Really, really gothic. Lots of spires. Really dark.
Full of like shit aspiring comics.
Sorry.
Desperately punting their shows. Come and see us in a pub.
That was quite entertaining. It's like the Royal Mile went really, really wrong. And it's full of people who've gone very wrong. Obviously, the townspeople are all like shambling, and they're all kind of, and because you don't know anything about what's going on, partly because it's a demo and partly because it's a Miyazaki game, you're just kind of there and you're looking down on this, you're kind of up on the like almost the rooftops really, and you're looking down into this kind of corridor, like the Royal Mile actually, with all these kind of craggy spires and church kind of cathedral gothic things around, and there's just a lot of kind of zombie-ish things, and they're all looking at something just burning on a big cross, and they're all just looking at it, and I was just
sounds like Resident Evil 4 at the start.
Yeah, I was just like, what's going on? You hear these noises coming from places, and that's the thing, like you walk past the door and it'll be kind of something on the other side is bashing it and making these terrible sounds. And you're just like, I'm not opening that. And anyway, you get to the boss, and the boss is like this. It's a kind of giant skeletal goat thing, and it's got moss kind of hanging from it, but it makes this noise like horrifying mermaids screaming underwater. And you go nearer to it, and the sound gets worse and more, and it reverberates more. And the nearer you are to it, the more it's just making this awful shrieking noise that it sounds completely otherworldly, and it just really put the spooks.
It sounds
on me.
like
it's great.
They've gone for like a bit more of a horror.
It's definitely more overtly horror. So far, anyway, but it's creepy in this amazing way. Also, interestingly, for Souls nerds, the combat's very different. You don't have a shield. You have 2 weapons, and basically if you get hit and you hit back fast enough, you regain your health. So instead of hiding behind like it's very easy in Souls to just hide behind it and then swipe occasionally. If you do that in Bloodborne, you'll die. You have to get in there. You have to get in there and swipe, and you can transform your weapon from a kind of close blade to a long blade with a kind of press of a button. So you have to get in there and really fight for your life and properly get into the moment of mortal peril. In order to get your health back. So
sounds excellent.
It is really good, because I found it in Souls it was easy to be very reserved and hide a lot, and kind of if you saw something you just withdraw. And in Bloodborne the combat's been really specifically designed to push you into encounters and make the encounters, everyone has to be exciting. So it feels a lot more kind of alive as a combat game, which is cool. I mean, if you played Souls running around like you do sometimes, dual wielding with no clothes on, it's more like that than it is.
What have people been telling you about me?
It's more like that kind of, duck and roll, hit back fast combat.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of Souls players didn't get to enjoy that side of the game because they were, busy with the sphere.
Well, I felt one of the major problems with Dark Souls 2 is the fact that it had a much better combat system, but then didn't have terribly good enemies to fight.
Yeah, that was a problem.
So, but no, I'm really excited by this.
I'm fascinated by Bloodborne. It's one of those games that you just know is going to be like really, really good. Like, but it's also it also looks like I'm not going to be able to play it alone because it is really scary, and I'm a complete coward, and I can't play scary games. And I've managed the Souls games because they're so good. I kind of got over myself. But with Bloodborne, it's so creepy.
I've never got into scary games at all. But I got into scary films at one point.
Oh, I can't do
I don't
those
understand why.
I watched The Ring when I was 14 and I had to sleep at the foot of my parents' bed for a week.
Oh, you giant baby.
I know, it's pathetic.
I'm rubbish at them. I'm not good at them. But I kind of found it's a bit like with chilies, you know, and that thing of being like, you know, if you get into eating spicy food, it's like you end up being...
I've gone really into horror films lately.
It's the same thing of being like, when it makes you feel uncomfortable, it's sort of a bit addictive.
But my brain can't... I think I have a brain that... My brain fucks with me for fun all the time. Like, if it's dark and I'm alone, my brain will just make shit up.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be like, I bet there's someone under your bed with a slashy knife coming to slash you up.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I am a massive wit. I live alone, just for the people on the internet. I live alone.
Don't tell them that. Jesus.
You've got pretty good security on that place, though.
I got damn good security. Don't even try. And, no, I'm a big wuss, but I think... You know, similar to Chili's, but also, I mean, I compare it to, like, going on extreme fairground rides or something.
Yeah.
Like, you want to sort of get through it and push through it and be like, yes, I did that.
But there's a certain time of night where my brain can't distinguish between things that I've made up or that I've watched and reality. Like, one time I watched...
Have you been to a doctor?
I think this comes from reading too much as a child, because when I was, like, really little, like 7-ish, or even younger, I would sometimes get confused about whether something had actually happened or whether I'd read it in a book.
Yeah.
And I'd have to think about it.
Give us an example.
You have to be very careful about the books they give you.
Well, you know, I'd be like, oh, my friend, I can't think of an example. Like, the famous 5 books or something like that. Mm-hmm. I would think that had happened to my friends, and then have to be like, wait, no, that didn't happen to anybody. It was in a book. So, but I mean, I remember watching the first episode of the Walking Dead TV series, which was really, really good. But that night I was on my own, and I ended up sleeping under a duvet under the radiator in my hallway because it got to about 3 a.m, and in my head, the zombies couldn't get me if I was in a room without any windows. And the hallway, I'm aware this is making me sound completely insane. Wow. I think in this small respect, I am probably completely insane. But my brain can't really... I can't do scary stuff because my brain just feeds it back to me in the middle of the night and freaks me out.
I just can't hack it a lot of the time. But I might try and get into it. The thing was, I tried to play some Amnesia once. I think the thing was, I got really played, actually. When I started at Video Gamer in my last job, I wasn't that aware of like a lot of internet video culture. I just like making videos. And to be honest, I'm still not that aware of internet video culture. I just like making videos. But I got one of the things that everyone requested. I was like, hey Matt, like you should do a live stream where you play loads of scary games for a day. And I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. Why not? Not being aware that this was already like a massively popular thing on Twitch, and people basically just want to watch you being uncomfortable. And so I tried to play Slender and Amnesia. And I was just terrified.
Slender messed me up for about 3 months when I played that. It was 3 months of sleeping with the light on because I didn't like shadows.
Really frightening stuff.
It's so scary.
But I find that fascinating because it's a rubbish little game. Like, it doesn't look real, and yet it's very frightening.
It's that whole someone watching you from a distance thing. It's that scene. Is it Nightmare on Elm Street? That scene with the watching.
Yeah.
Well, I once ran home because I saw a shadow that I thought was something. Like, I'm a real...
When was that, last week?
Yeah, you know, the other night.
It's funny though.
Sprint for miles.
I'm like I know I bring my partner's little boy up quite often on this podcast, but he loves scary stuff, and he'll watch YouTube videos of Slender and be cackling away, and I'm like, I am 26 years old, and that scared me so much I had to sleep with the lights on, and you're just fine with it. What is going on here?
It is like a scale I don't understand. In fact, I have people being like, you were scared by that? Why? That's not scary at all.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, how can you not? I don't understand. When I watched a film called The Orphanage a few years ago, and it shit me up properly. I felt like I'd been in a car crash.
Yeah.
And it was just the most
The knocking on the wall scene.
Oh, it's a really good film. You should watch it. I won't spoil any more, but it's an excellent film, but it messed me right up.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You are a big girl.
I am a big girl.
I also am a huge girl.
Yeah.
It's an issue.
Oh, no, it's fine.
No, it's odd because when I played Slender, I didn't remotely have that kind of reaction at all. I'd been following Slender for a while. I think it originated on the Something Awful forums as like an ARG kind of thing. And I was following that, and they were making videos of it, and it was sort of getting increasingly more surreal and odd and kind of Lynchian and just really creepy, but also done in this kind of Blair Witch style, like documentary kind of, I'm just filming it with my buddies kind of way. And that scared the shit out of me. I just could not handle it because and I'm not sure what the actual distinction is, because I haven't really had a game that has scared me that much. I've played Amnesia and I played other sort of horror games in Silent Hill and whatever.
I found Eternal Darkness was...
I haven't played that.
Eternal Darkness was game. Really scary.
Yeah.
I didn't get very far into that.
I didn't get that far either. Because
Fatal Frame kind of was a bit much for
what
me,
I loved about Eternal Darkness was it broke you slowly.
Right.
It was like a torture machine. Rather than trying to be like, make you jump with a big scary thing. It was so clever, and I'm kind of amazed no one's ripped it off since properly.
Yeah, people should have ripped it off more.
And yet, like, if they did, everyone would just be like, oh, you're just ripping off this, because it was done, they've left it too long now. If it became a thing that games did, it would be okay,
It's been 15 years now.
Somebody should do it.
That's enough time to rip something off.
What is it?
You're reviving it. Oh, sorry.
Well, basically, like...
Explain it.
Sorry. Most people already know about the gimmick of it, but basically the idea was that it started to mess with you by creating stuff. The game had a sanity meter in it, and when your sanity meter hit like low or hit 0, it would do things that weren't real.
Okay.
And it had quite a wide. I mean, after a while, you start to get an idea for its tricks, but for quite a while, we would do things you hadn't seen, and it had this selection of illusions it could do to just mess with you. And the thing is, some of them were a bit shit. Some of them like weren't scary. But the clever thing was it would do them so consistently, over and over again, that you would genuinely start to question everything. It would do stuff like you'd have rooms with, like, you walk into a room and there'd be 3 enemies, and you'd be like, you'd try and get away from them. You'd turn around to go through the door would be locked, and then you'd like try and fight them, and you wouldn't kill them, and then they'd like start killing you, and your character would die, and then it would just go poof, and you just come through the door again. It's like that whole thing was just not real. But then it had the classic stuff that everyone remembers of being like coming up and pretending your save data on your memory card is being corrupted. One of them just came up as if like your TV volume was being altered, and the TV volume bar would just go down to 0.
It wouldn't work now because it was like that green, bar you used to have on old CRTs. But
it did loads of things like this, like it reinsert controller. So it had things that were like kind of really kind of breaking the fourth wall to mess with you. But then it also had loads of stuff like, your health would just start draining. And you'd be like, why is my health draining? Oh, you'd hear noises of monsters that weren't there. You'd have a room with no monster in it. You'd be able to hear a monster. And it was like a lot of them, like you're like, whatever. But it ground you down until you'd just be freaking out. And you'd have this thing of being like, oh, there's no point trying to fight these monsters. They're not real. Are they real? I think they're real. No, they're not. Are they? And it just really effectively, through its sheer consistency of tricks, just gave you a really properly sense that you were just going mad. Yeah. And it was really, it broke you. It broke me anyway.
See, what I think gets me with horror games is that breaking of the fourth wall. Like, I've been much more afraid with like playing ARGs than I have with other games, because it's that kind of sense of, this is kind of in reality. This is kind of happening almost to you, and if you want to directly take part in it, then you can, and then maybe it is directly happening to you. And it's that sense of, this is a thing that is grounded, it is in the world.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that elsewhere. I didn't really get that with I didn't get that sense with Amnesia, where it's just like, I'm exploring, and I know there's a thing and there's other things, but I'm still in a damn game, I'm still just playing a game. And it's the blurring of reality that I find the most scary. I
think my brain lacks the ability to not blur reality with everything. I think that's probably why I find everything so scary, because my brain just doesn't have that kind of, this is fiction.
And these
barrier.
two messed me up so much because I didn't see the monster for I played for about an hour and a half, and I was streaming at the time. I think the stream has been lost because it was one of those ones that just wasn't saved. But it was like, I just didn't see the monster. And everyone was like, "Oh, this is weird." Like, usually you would have seen the monster a couple of times by now, but I just didn't see it, and I was just terrified because I kept obviously being really close to it. And I love the fact in that it's the worst thing you can possibly have of when your character gets freaked out. They just fall over.
Yeah.
They just they just go, "Oh, I feel like lightheaded." Then you get up again, and when you get up again, the whole world's just slightly darker and a bit weirder. And the idea of like everything taking on a bit of a slant in the way that paintings look a bit weird when you're freaked out and stuff. But I really want to play. The problem is, I'm a real pansy, and actually, somebody in the comments last week were like, "Oh, sounding like you're a bit unfair about Silent Hill." And it's like I can't play these games, so I don't have but I kind of want to play Machine for Pigs because apparently it's got a really interesting story.
I'd quite like to play PT. Well, I wouldn't like to play it. I'd like to watch someone play PT, but I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I got about 2.5 minutes into a YouTube of it and just no, never watching that, never playing it. Can't. Too scary.
Yeah, my base level is like I love Resident Evil 4. I like the Fear games, the first two anyway.
Yeah.
Because they're like a bit scary, but not that scary. Anyway, I'm rubbish. But I am really looking forward to for the same thing. Like if you're saying Bloodborne is, you get a feeling it's definitely gonna be good. I'm still hyped.
I'm really
Destiny.
I'm
still hyped for Destiny, and I'm worried that this happens to me with every Bungie game. I don't know why. Maybe it is the Bungie rope effect that I always remain hyped for Bungie games right up until day of launch, and then as soon as I get them, I just don't care.
I had that with Titanfall, as I may have said on last podcast, and I was so hyped for it. I played the beta loads. It came out. I played it for one evening. I've literally not touched it since. Just that one evening.
But I keep finding myself thinking, "Oh man, I wish I had it now. I'd love to just sit and spend an evening playing Destiny." And I'm really worried I'll get it and then just be like. It
is strange that I've been playing one game for the last 2 weeks, just continuously. I've played 21 hours of it in like 10 days.
I'd be fascinated to know what have we been playing.
It's Persona 4 Golden, which is a game I've had for about 4 years, and I've been meaning to play because everyone says I love it, and it's the kind of thing I really like. And it's just great. It's really good. I've been playing it for about 2 or 3 hours every single day. But I find I'm a one-game person. You know, when I get really into something, I have literally no interest in playing anything else right now because I'm playing that, you know. Some people will play 10 or 11 games a bit each at once. I just can't do it. I get super into one. So if I haven't finished it by the time Destiny comes out, I'm going to be like, got Persona.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same way. I mean, weirdly, like if I'm reading a book, I'm more than happy to read multiple books at once. But when it comes to gaming, it's like I like lifestyle games. I like a game that I can just
a good old WoW.
I spent a good 5 years in WoW, 6 hours a day.
Bloody hell.
It was a long time. And then, I moved on to some other MMO and then moved on to League of Legends. And I just, that's how, it feels like that's the right way to do it.
What were you getting out of WoW after, say, 4 years of 6 hours a day? What were you still getting out of it?
Habit, mostly. I mean, the first...
RSI. Shit joke story. Carry on.
Slight mental issues, loneliness. No, it's... You become part of a culture of WoW players. That's mostly it. Certainly if you're part of a guild, you become friends with people, it's your social circle. Yeah. And it's what you do if you raid every Thursday night, that's what you do every Thursday night. It just becomes this kind of habit.
I had the same thing. I played WoW for a long time and I got into the raiding. Didn't get super deep in. The raiding was when I decided that I need to stop, mainly because it was just that thing, and that's one of the reasons why when I got into Dota, it felt like this isn't like this, because it is different. Like with Dota or something like that with League, every game is its own reward, and you're not tricking yourself really into thinking that like you're working towards anything. Mm-hmm. It's just a play-by-play thing. So you spend 40 minutes playing a game because you enjoy playing that 40 minutes. Whereas I found, especially, I think they changed a lot of it, but it felt like in the early days of raiding and WoW, it felt like very much like you were just working towards stuff that wasn't really real. And you were like work to get something else. And it was like, it was always kind of tricking you with like carrots that weren't real. Whereas the carrot in something like with League of Legends or Dota, equally enticing, but it's just like the fun of the game. And you do have games, like I've had patches with Dota where I just I'd hate myself for that actually, when I'd spend the whole evening playing Dota and I'd like not enjoy any of the games, and I go to bed being like pissed off because we lost.
Time,
we lost 4 games in a row, and that's my entire evening. Like, gone. I mean, in the end, the main reason I had to give it up was just because I wasn't playing enough games. And it's the thing of like some people can play 11 games at once. I have the problem is I get addicted to one, but then I feel I'm done with that game. Then I don't feel like I can start playing another game because of what I do, until I've like made a proper video about that game. But that really varies, and I get stuck on stuff because it's like most games I play and I go, oh, it's pretty good. And I could bash out a video in a couple of days being like, it's pretty good for this reason, it's not very good for this. But I got so into King of Dragon Pass, and I'm still playing it. I've been playing it for about 40 hours. It's one of the best games I've played in a long time. And yet I keep being like, oh, don't start playing any more games until you've made the video for King of Dragon Pass. And it's like, yeah, but Matt, that video is going to take ages to script, and then you're going to have to like get a medieval costume and do some green screen. And it's like, you can't do anything else.
You have damn structure in your life, Matt.
I don't have any structure.
Well, I mean, you structure these things around, I got to do my job for my YouTube channel and stuff.
Yeah, but I don't have a boss, so I'm really bad at like not making deadlines and stuff.
Reviewing was a very good. I don't do much like reviewing anymore, just because firstly Kotaku doesn't really do reviews.
The deadlines always seem like a fucker with reviews when I used to do them.
Well, this is it, because you have to play 3 games a week. When you're a staff writing reviewer, you have to play.
Yeah.
You usually have to do 2 reviews a week. And when I was working at IGN, I was doing probably 3 reviews a month on top of all the rest of the job that I had. So it really helped though, because I had to play through to finish. Like as my job, I had to play through all these games, and I was probably the most rounded player I've ever been when I was doing mostly reviewing.
Do you feel how you approach games is different now that you don't do that?
Oh yeah, like I find it more difficult. I certainly don't finish things ever. No, I very rarely finish a game. When you're reviewing something for on IGN, we had a policy. It was like you have to finish a game you're reviewing unless it's like. I mean, I didn't finish Dark Souls when I was reviewing that because it was literally impossible.
I didn't finish Dark Souls.
No, it was impossible. It was not possible to finish.
No, we tried. We tried
so hard. We tried. I spent 200 hours on that game. Anyway, but yeah. So there was a policy you had to finish it. So I just had to finish it, and that actually kind of helped because now I feel like my spare time is precious, and if I'm not enjoying something, I'll just stop playing it forever. And I think it actually helps sometimes. Like if you're not enjoying a game for an hour, it's good if you have to play it, and maybe you'll see something a lot better about it later on. Whereas if you don't have that, that you have to do it, then it becomes a bit more difficult to find the motivation. I find.
Yeah.
I find I do know what you mean though. I find like after years of like critiquing games and taking them apart, I find, and I don't know, like I've recently hit a point where I feel like I have the need for like games as escapism a little bit more at the moment. And I'm not sure, I'm trying to find the right one for it, but I'm just not sure I can do that anymore in the same way.
It's strange, like whenever I have that same thing, whenever I'm playing a video game, somewhere in my mind is going, what are you going to write about this?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Wasting time unless you're
finding something to write. What kind of video are you going to do? What are you going to say?
Yeah.
Do you like it? How much do you like it?
I don't plan to write anything about Persona. I just plan to enjoy it for a long, long time.
That was my thing with Dota, but it started just infringing on my life so much because it became a social thing. I didn't know most of the guys I was playing, but they became my friends. We'd chat on Skype.
Yeah.
I know where they're from.
Well, that's the thing.
That's like when a game becomes your social life, as in WoW as well, right? That's when it becomes really difficult to extricate yourself. Same as EVE. What the EVE guys, CCP, often say, people quit EVE, they don't quit their friends.
Yeah. And like with me, going back to me playing board games now as a thing, it's like playing League of Legends and imagine playing Dota. It's the same kind of feeling. In my case, I know who I'm playing with. And we have our little group, and it's very much like being, back in the early 90s or late 80s or whatever, and just being in your basement and you're just with your buddies and you're just playing around.
Cracking open a 6-pack.
Yeah.
In the game.
In your basement with your buddies. Hang on a minute, you're not from this country.
Where we have neither basements nor friends.
No. Simply rain and lofts and adversaries.
Crawl spaces. That's what we get.
No, I know what you mean, but I found recently that I try, even though it's harder work to get people together, it's sort of like I think online gaming is not a replacement. Sometimes it feels like it is, and it's so much more convenient. But there's nothing quite like having people in the same room.
Yes.
I mean, this isn't even really about the hobby. I think it's just more about like something I find like I start to go. You realise that we're not made for this. We're not as creatures.
We're animals that need to interact.
We're not made to sit in boxes of concrete on our own for most of the time, which is largely what I do. But we're not made for it. Like we're supposed to be out doing stuff together.
Yeah,
and it's weird. Like I don't know.
Yeah, that's a funny thing that's happening in general in culture right now, is we're realizing that we're not actually built for all the information that's constantly thrown at us all the time. Like things like Twitter are just breaking all of us because we can't handle it. And I read a really interesting thing in the New Scientist about this, in that the online thing, right? So when you're commenting or when you're on Twitter or whatever, if someone is mean to you, you get the same fight or flight response that you would get in a real person situation, and the same kind of anger, the same chemicals and hormones that happen, but there's nowhere for them to go because there's no reasonable way for you to express it, because if you're in real life you might punch them or run away or stomp off or whatever, but if you're sitting in front of a computer, those bad chemicals just don't go anywhere, so
you can't run away.
They keep circulating, and so you can work yourself into this negative spiral on the internet. And this kind of the article I was reading was trying to explain the phenomenon of mostly negative comments.
I'm terrible for that.
And it's just you basically get caught in this spiral where all the hormones that you would usually, or the chemicals in your brain that you would usually get rid of, do something with, go and punch something or whatever, they just stay there and go round and round and round. It's really interesting.
I need to read that article.
I'll find it for you.
I'm terrible for that. Like, somebody will say something that really pisses me off and I'll go, no, not responding to that. But then it'll just sit there in your thing. It'll sit there in your little tweet thing, recent tweets. And eventually I'll just crack. And I'll just...
it's just staring at you.
It's just there and it won't go away.
There. No, I fairly recently got... For some reason, I thought it was a very good idea to get an Ask.fm account.
I've seen you having fun with that.
Oh, yeah. And I was like, I'll people ask me about my dog and burgers I've eaten and stuff. It'll be great. Everyone will be happy. And no, it's just... It's I mean, the ratio between sort of positive and negative comments are, I mean, it's not 50-50 or anything, but you still get, the odds comments.
Yeah.
And, it's just like, I want to respond. If this was in actual reality...
Listen, if it was in reality, you'd fucking kill them. Or try to.
But even just why? Why are you asking this? Why? Like, on just a basic human level, why?
I think it's strange, and I think that you're right, the way, especially like with a lot of work environments, like the whole cubicle culture, which has been around for a long time, but combined now with internet, social media being like, most people spending a lot of their lives in like, purposefully like self-contained, like keep you away from other humans so you don't get distracted, but then they're getting distracted by thousands of other people in weird ways that humans aren't supposed to relate. And I just find that, I think increasingly, and to bring it back to like having some sort of, for those of you who go, what the fuck, there is a relevance here, because I honestly think that play is like, it's such a central part of like human behaviour, like that we obviously do mainly as children, but then I think historically as adults as well, of like having settings in which play is a sort of cultural, social thing. It just feels like that importance is coming back. There
was another a neuroscientist comment in, I think, the same article, which was about Facebook, basically, and the interaction that you get from that. And she was comparing the reaction and the emotions that you get in your brain from Facebook to sugar, in that it's very addictive and not nourishing. That you're not getting the social interaction that your brain needs from Facebook, but it seems like you are. Like with sugar, you're not getting any nourishment, but it feels like you're getting, like you're eating something valuable. And then you just want to eat more and more and more of it. And it's the same with Facebook. It's why people get kind of obsessed with it. Because you're not actually, your brain thinks that you're getting social interaction from it, but you're not getting social interaction. You're not getting the, what's the word? What's that stuff you get when you touch somebody else, that brain chemical, that hormone? Oxytocin?
I can't remember.
Anyway, you're not getting it. So it's
you ain't
funny.
getting it. Whatever it is, no.
So like interacting on the internet is like the junk food of interacting in real life, which I thought was an interesting concept.
It is. And I think, I don't know.
I still prefer playing Mario Kart in a real room with people. Although I did get horribly addicted to online Mario Kart for about a month this year. And then I would finish work and then I would pick up the Wii U gamepad and I'd go just play a game of Mario Kart, and that'd be it until bedtime every single night. This ridiculously high, they give you scores to match you up with other people, and I just had this score. It got to the point where I was racing with 10 people and everybody else would have like 1,000 fewer points than me, and I was like, okay, I've got to stop playing this now.
Sure. I mean, I'm again going back to I'm a LOL player sort of conversation. I'm not entirely convinced that multiplayer gaming doesn't kind of scratch the same itch. Like when it comes to
multiplayer gaming is probably different from Facebook. It's probably more nourishing.
I mean, in my case, I'm not just doing something, but I speak. I'm actually speaking, on Skype or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, it is essentially just a five-way phone call or something.
That's still real interaction.
But it is real interaction. When I was doing, not raids, but when I was doing quests or something with random players in WoW, obviously that wasn't done on vocally. There was a
bit of Ventrilo on the side, I remember, back in the day.
But
bit of Ventrilo
so
for lads.
Old now.
No, I do know what you mean though, and it is like, it isn't that it's not real. It's just I think it's very, very good, but it's not quite. I guess it's basically the equivalent of being somebody who doesn't really go out but just spends the whole time like calling up everyone on the phone. And it's like it's
a very weird
nice.
thing to imagine.
It's nice, but I don't know. I don't know. I just found myself like it's. I guess it's like going off heroin onto morphine or something. It's like it's not quite the same. I don't.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I'd been doing this for months. And the thing was, this is because I mainly when I was working at video game, I just, because of my commutes, because I was cycling like 20 miles a day, that's why I just became a weird Became a weird skeletal character.
Yeah.
Perfectly fit, but weird looking. Big legs,
tiny arms,
tiny everything. Weird skeleton man. But yeah, I just used to spend my whole evenings just playing Dota mainly, and just not really seeing people. And Fraser was like, "It's fine. I'm spending all my time talking to people and having fun with friends." But actually, it's like it's not quite the same. It isn't quite the same. But I don't know. I don't think it's bad, and I think it's way better than just playing games on your own. Way better.
Yeah, I think that there's this kind of there's this trend, particularly among games journalists, to be like, I miss the days when we do single player games.
Oh yeah.
And I do miss that. And some of my favorite games are single player games, but it's not a bad word. Multiplayer isn't a bad word.
It depends also on how you grew up. Like when I was a kid, none of my friends. I went to an all-girls school, and none of my friends liked games. It was just me, basically.
Yeah.
So I played by myself, and the friends I had who were into games were on the internet. And so when I kind of grew up and moved away and found friends in real life who played games together, they'd spent their whole childhoods playing games with each other, and that was like new for me.
Sure.
And it was very exciting at that point. But I mean, I used to do pad passing a lot. Like for me, playing a game with someone is playing a single player game, but passing the pad now and then. Like I really enjoy doing that. I've always done that with friends and partners and stuff. It's a really nice way to play together, and also means you don't get angry at each other.
Yeah,
which I find happens a bit too often sometimes, especially when you're playing co-op with someone. It's just like an excuse for an argument.
I like multiplayer within very strict boundaries, and that's why I like stuff like Dota, because it's like, do you want to play a game? Yes. I'm going to get a cup of tea, and we'll play a game. The game will last half an hour, and then I can choose if I want to play another one, or I can leave. And that's it. It's like contained. But I find whenever I'm playing games, and this is why I was a bit like, oh God, when at E3 they were like, look at all of these 4-player adventures. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Because I like traveling on my own. I'm a weird guy. I like being on my own sometimes because I feel like I don't like to have the pace of what I'm doing dictated by other people, and I find that weirdly a lot with games of being like.
You sound like a lot of fun, Matt.
He's great at parties.
I am great at parties, providing I've come on my own. In which case, I have tons of fun. I do what I want, and then when I want to leave, I just leave.
Just by himself. He's just there eating all the Pringles.
No, it's just
by himself.
It's a weird. I don't know. I just don't like that weird thing. When I was playing the Destiny Vita, I was really enjoying it, but I had this thing of being like, and I feel really bad to admit this, but basically I was saying to people, I don't have a headset. I don't have a headset, so I'm just not going to talk. And it's like, I realised I did have the little headset that came with the PS4, that little crap, and it's really crappy.
Yeah.
But it meant that, like, at first I didn't plug it in, because I was like, I can't be bothered. But then other people would join my party, and they would be chatting to each other, and it would be coming through my TV, and it would really bother me, because I like the kind of just playing a game and just getting immersed in the world. And so I ended up plugging in the little headset thing into the controller just so I couldn't hear them. But then I could hear them. No, because I don't mind going around. Like I actually kind of like if it's people I don't know very well. I actually kind of like the idea of just being with people we don't really know, just shooting stuff together and having that sense of camaraderie, the silent camaraderie. It's deep. It's deep.
You're a stoic man.
That's funny.
But then if this thing of like, eventually I end up like putting the ear in a bit so I could hear what they were saying, but I just wasn't talking because I don't like to.
I think, well, sometimes when you're playing a game like Destiny with other people, it's kind of like when you all go out for the night and I guess it's 7 o'clock and we're leaving the pub and everyone's like, let's go there. And then 3 other people are like, no, we'll go there. It's like, oh, well, Jane wants to get some cigarettes. And you're like,
yes, that's
let's just go somewhere.
That's exactly
And eventually one of you just marches off and everyone dawdles away. It's a bit like that. When
I am that awful person on nights out that's why I don't like going out with like more than 3 people. When there's a big group, now we've got to wait for this person because they've got to go and this. Now we've got to wait for this person. It's like, no, I'm going to the pub. Who wants to come to the pub? They can catch us up. Like, why do we have to walk around in one big group? But obviously with online games, they make you do that. You can't just be like, well, I'm going to go ahead, I'll see you in a bit. They'd be like, are you ready to leave the shop yet? No. Or like, yes. I just want to get on with it. I either just want to get on with it or I just want to dawdle around and everyone's going, oh, we've got to wait for Matt. He's like jumping around in circles and driving his hovercraft into a car, into a wall. And I'm just like, I don't care. Go without me. I'm having fun. Like,
Yeah.
it's a weird thing of feeling beholden to people and being part of like a convoy, which is nice if you're with friends, but
Yeah, no, and I absolutely get that. I think that the main point of all of this is, if you play with people then you're going to be a happy puppy.
yeah.
And if you play with strangers are horrible, and just don't be around them.
Aside from in Dota, I've never had that. Like, I've never had a group of friends who play games online that have been like really close friends.
Yeah.
That I remember, like, because
I've never had that either.
The Midnight Resistance guys, like Sean Bell and all those guys, I've known them for years. I always tried to get in on their games on Xbox Live, but they had like such a tight knit group of like their mates that always played. They had their own niche jokes. Every time I tried to play with them, it would always be like, "Oh, we've only got 4 slots, and they're all full." I'd be like, "Oh, I don't matter." And so now it's the opposite. Now I've got loads of people who want to play online games with me, but I don't really know any.
Really popular guys who need you.
But I don't really know any of them, and it's weird playing games with people you don't know.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when I play LOL in a pickup group and with just random strangers, it's a horrible experience.
It's interesting how it's so different.
They're not socialized. Like, they don't know how to speak to you. They are mean. They don't know how to play mostly.
Yeah, you can have a lot of rough people on Dota as well.
But
I do have some good experiences occasionally, but it's more rare.
It's more rare.
I had a I think GTA Online is a perfect illustration of this. In that,
Do people still play that?
Yeah.
Okay.
GTA. Well, I've not played it since I had the horrible experience of trying to review it when it was still broken. But I played it a little while ago actually, just for fun, and it's improved a lot. And the problem is that everyone I knew who played it has stopped. And the thing is, GTA Online, when you're playing it with friends, it's the best game in the world. You have a hilarious time and anecdotes happen and it's just brilliant. And I could go on. It's just great though. And then when you're playing it on your own with random strangers, it's just a game where you get shot in the head by strangers repeatedly all the time and it's not fun at all. One time I was, I had to restart a lot of times in GTA because I kept deleting my character back in the day. And one of the times when I started again, I was in the clothes shop buying some clothes, which is one of the first missions, and someone drove up, parked their car in front of the door, and just stood on the hood flipping the bird at me repeatedly. Yeah. So I couldn't get out of the shop. I was just stuck in the shop. And I was like, there's nothing I can do here. And he stood there just, continually flipping the bird for about 5 minutes. And I was like, all right. And I went off and did something else. I came back an hour later, still there. I was like, what are you getting out of this?
Yeah.
I don't understand. So it's the best game in the world.
Griefing is its own sort of strange psychology.
Yeah.
And I mean, I haven't really experienced that since like playing MMOs. You don't really get that in MOBAs.
People are very creative in GTA when they grief you usually. It's actually quite funny sometimes. But it's just the gulf in experience between when you're trying to escape the cops halfway up a mountain on a bicycle with a friend because you lost your car. Yeah. And the gulf between that experience and just trying to get to a mission marker but being continually blown up by morons who think it's funny is so huge that it really brings into focus like what multiplayer gaming
the whole scope
is
the whole spectrum of the rainbow.
But multiplayer gaming is only fun when it's the people that are fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's strange how again, I had so much experience of dealing with the griefers and WoW, but playing LOL and I'm assuming playing Dota, it's like there's such a kind of weird peer pressure that relates around you have to play correctly, you have to play well. And if you don't, then you're going to get bullied.
Yeah, it is. That
competitive
very
is different, isn't it? When it's
and the thing is, that's really funny. I don't know if this is true in League of Legends, but what I noticed in Dota 2 is when I first started playing, I felt so intimidated, and whenever I got anything wrong, I was so apologetic because you knew that everyone's going to come down on you like a ton of bricks, because it's basically like you've just wasted half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour of somebody's time. Which I get that. You start to get an idea of how that feels, because you're like, oh God. And it's not your fault as a new player. It's kind of the fact that the matchmaking thing is clearly a bit broken because you shouldn't have even been there, basically. However, one thing I did start to notice is once you get out of that early stages of being the guy who's like, I'm really sorry, it's my first game. And actually, I had a few games where people said, I'm really sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. And I just like, oh, don't worry about it, man. It's fine. Just do your best and don't do this. And you try and teach them something so the next game they wouldn't be as bad.
Yeah.
But then when you get outside of that realm, you just get occasionally people who just flame their teammates. Whenever it starts going south, they flame and they get so angry. And I started to notice that it's always the people who start bitching about their teammates and going, you're terrible, you're losing us. They're always the worst players. They are always the ones who are actually like, dude, you're... And then in a weird way, maybe I start playing with too many Swedish dudes who often have this demeanour. They were just like, they get really zen about it and just start laughing and just being like, it doesn't matter. He's clearly just really bad at the game.
I used to live with somebody who played 6 or 7 hours of Dota a day. And his bedroom was through the wall from mine, so I would just hear him screaming at people all night. And I always suspected he might just be a dreadful player. He was always just screaming that everybody else was doing everything wrong all the time. That usually is people who aren't very good at something who do that.
It's kind of tends to be the way of it. It's the people who are getting very angry about everyone else.
It's the guy on the couch yelling at the football team who isn't doing well. It's like, will you fucking get out there and play football? You're probably dreadful at it.
Yeah.
Same deal.
Yeah, which is this funny thing of being like, what are you talking about? You don't understand how this game works.
I want to play enough of... I've never played a game of Dota or LoL. It's not my kind of thing, but I'd like to play enough of it to be able to understand what's going on in the esports.
Well, have you got 600 hours free?
This is the problem. If I could just play it for 5 hours just to understand what was going on, amazing, but that's never going to happen. Because I really love watching I love watching the highlights of the games. Because to me, it's like what I imagine must be like for normal people just watching a normal game thing, because it makes zero sense and have no idea what's going on, and everyone's really excited. And I don't know why.
I really wish I was into watching it. I'm just not into watching sports in any way. So in the same way I can't get into the World Cup, and that's when I stopped playing Dota, as I realised it was an evolutionary dead end for me, because I was enjoying it a lot. I played for 1,000 hours. I loved it. I got quite good at it, but it's like I'm never gonna want to be involved in the professional scene. It's not as a player, but just as somebody talking about it or writing about it. I'm not interested in it.
Speaking of competitive gaming, I went to the Pokemon National Championships a few weekends ago.
We're gonna skip the questions and we're gonna have.
We don't need to skip the questions, do we?
Well, we'll just go over.
Whatever. I went to the Pokemon National Championship.
Tell me.
It's amazing.
If you haven't heard Keza's Pokemon sub story, it's an earlier episode. I can't remember.
16.
Oh, is it?
That was the last one I was on. Yeah.
Okay, episode 16.
Pretty sure it's episode 16.
Okay. Encyclopedia Keza. Done. I'm rubbish at that stuff.
Memory. Yes, I went to... so I wanted to go to the Pokemon Championships when I was 11. And I didn't go because of tragic reasons that are explored in the previous podcast.
Previously on Daft.
But I went finally on my 26th birthday. I went to Washington DC, and I went to a big convention center with a huge, gigantic floating Pikachu above the hallway, and I spent the weekend with 3,000 children, and some adults who were all playing Pokemon competitively, and it was amazing. There were all these awesome families who, they brought their kids, and because their kids were so into competitive Pokemon, they'd kind of gotten into it too. So you had these whole families that were, some of them, the adults were competing in the Masters and the kids were competing in the Juniors. And there was this lovely guy I met who actually, he was divorced from his wife. And he brought his little boy who was, the top-ranked player in Europe. And the wife was, not letting him play Pokemon, wouldn't let him do any Pokemon, not a fan of Pokemon at all. And so he couldn't really train except when he was with his dad. And his dad had to fight really hard to get him to Washington. And, it was just this lovely story that he'd managed to get his kid to Washington with his kid. And they were playing together, and it was great.
His wife sounds awesome.
She does sound like a pretty bad person. You don't want to cast aspersions, but, if you wouldn't let your kid play... he's world class. He's a world class Pokemon player. Yeah. And so I'm,
what a fucking lick your tongue, am I right? Yeah.
But these kids. So I'm, I used to play competitive Pokemon literally 10 years ago. 15 years ago, actually. 15 years ago. And so to me, the new Pokemon is just like, it doesn't make any sense. And I was talking to this guy who's 22, just come out, he's a college kid, and he just come out of his match, and he lost, and he was like, oh, my fucking Rain, Strength, and Poliwrath didn't one-shot his Gengar, man. Just didn't one-shot his Gengar. And the dudes were like, yeah, man, that Rain, but he really just turned that Rain about. He's a super bulky Gengar, and I'm really sorry. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is amazing. And over the course of the weekend, I learned competitive Pokemon just by paying a lot of attention and drawing on my previous knowledge. I just learned it. And suddenly, all the big screen stuff, and it was all streamed, and there was a huge big screen, and there were kind of a couple hundred people watching at any one time, and for the final there were a few thousand. Everyone was just watching these Pokemon matches, and I was like understanding what was going on and who was being clever. And the guy who won was a Korean guy who used Pachirisu, who's a little squirrel dude who nobody would expect Pachirisu to be a competitive Pokemon, but he'd managed to train it in such a way that it won. This little stupid squirrel was standing there next to like Mega Kangaskhan and all these huge monsters, and this little squirrel won the match, and it was just everyone went mental. And I was like, I get esports suddenly, because now I've watched competitive Pokemon. I had such a lot of time.
It's not a sport.
I had such a good time watching it. It was great. And they had the trading card game championships as well, and I used to play that when I was a kid, and I don't remember anything about that. And I was just watching these matches. And, people put a card down, everyone would go, ooh, like 100 people. And I'd be like, what's happening? I don't understand. But I just had such a good time.
Oh, shit. I can't believe they put that card down.
He didn't attach enough energy for the Mega Drain.
That's so sad. Like, I just don't appreciate sports, right? In any way. Sports. I wish I could give my Dota knowledge to somebody else. I wish I could siphon it into somebody else's brain. Somebody who loves sports. They could just immediately watch the international and be like, fuck, this is amazing. Because I understand it all. I can't be bothered.
But it really reminded me of all the stuff that I loved about Pokemon when I was a kid. I just thought if I had a kid who was at these championships, I would die of pride. Just watching all these parents sort of give their little children pep talks and send them in to play Pokemon competitively.
But they're not only taking it a bit too seriously. Do you see any of them being, behind the scenes chastised for not training their Gengar to be buff enough?
No, I'll be honest, I didn't see any of that.
Gengar ain't buff enough, Tommy. What did I tell you?
What did I tell you about switching out the Mega Charizard X?
Days. Get in the car.
But the parents were either bemused, like completely bemused by the whole thing, or they were kind of into Pokemon themselves. It was a nice mix. And it was really family orientated, and it was just lovely. It was a lovely weekend. I had a very nice time.
That is nice.
Yeah.
Pokemon. I like Pokemon.
It's great.
It's alright. It's great. It's fucking great, actually. For a long time, and I still think maybe that's one of my favourite games of all time are. Pokemon Red's still up there.
Yeah, it's probably
it blew my
top
fucking mind. I just remember playing it on a Game Boy, and just after, it took me about 3 or 4 hours, and after about 3 or 4 hours, I still remember sitting we were staying at someone's house, sitting on the bed playing Pokemon, and I had this moment where it just struck me. I just suddenly got what this game was. I was like, because I didn't know anything about it. And after about 2 hours, I think I just caught a Geodude, and I was just like, fuck, this is like an RPG, but with hundreds of things you can pretend. And I was just like, this is incredible. I just never played anything like it.
Pokemon is the classic child empowerment children's story. It's the Narnia, it's the Harry Potter, it's the you're special, and if you work hard, then you can be the best.
Get out there and enslave some creatures.
But it's like that, sending your kid out the door at 10 to become a Pokemon master. Like all these, classic children's stories revolve around, children existing independently in an adult-free world. And Pokemon is that, and it's that feeling of being powerful in yourself and working hard to be the best at something and all that. And it's a classic child empowerment.
And having a mother doesn't care about you at all.
Yeah, just send you out into the wilds.
How's it going, son?
With dangerous animals.
You haven't seen me for 6 months. I used to live here. One day I just left.
I had a great moment at a barbecue like a year ago. There was a 10-year-old girl there, and she had a DS, and she was like, I don't know, she was playing something. She was like, I'm kind of bored of this, and I had in my pocket a promo copy of Pokemon Black, and I just reached into my pocket and said, give this a try. And this wee girl just stuck it in, and she sat there for about an hour, and I was like, how you like it? And she just looked at me like, this is amazing. And I felt like I'd passed on it was great. Bloody love Pokemon.
My work here is done.
I felt bad for her mum. He didn't get consent.
No idea what's going on.
Like a Jedi.
Okay, let's do a couple of questions. We sort of covered this earlier, but Jason Killensworth asks, why is it impossible to fall in love with Dark Souls 2?
Oh, yeah. We had to. It doesn't have the dignity and the majesty, that's what I think it is.
I think it's just not as good. But then I wonder, because I sort of think, you love Demon Souls more. Maybe it's just your first.
Oh, I think it might be a bit like, well, no, because Dark Souls is, like, I think it's better than Demon Souls. It's not as personally important to me, but I think it's better.
All right, well, you've got it right then.
Yeah.
That's fine. it's the correct answer.
Yeah.
Edward Fenning asks, should more studios hire full-time writers to work on games, or are they not needed?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, is the answer.
Yeah.
It's just
The problem
objectively, yes.
Yeah, the problem is that writers are always contractors. They're always brought in for a project, and sometimes what happens is they're brought in for 6 months. They write all the stuff, then their contract expires and they go away, and then after that they mangle it. Everyone else mangles it.
I also think that from what I gather, like, you have to be, if you're going to have full-time writers, they need to be people who actually understand, like, what happens to the writing in terms of how it's used in a game. So when they come into
how to design a game, essentially, they have to have a background in it.
Yeah, and understanding, like, being able to, because I think otherwise they just.
If you get a film writer, they can't do it.
I can imagine they'd be a right pain in the arse, because I'm a writer.
Yeah.
And I imagine if I wrote something not having a completely explicit understanding of how game designs work and how that was going to be chopped up and how it might change, they'd just be a nightmare. They'd just be roaming around the studio like a crazy falcon, being like, "What are you doing? Why are you changing this?" And
I'm the artist.
yeah, no, I mean, my writers are arseholes. I'm one, I know.
But that's how it works now. Is they have the writer as this like separate entity who comes in to work with the team, not someone who's part of the team.
Yeah, I mean, Rhiannon Pratchett has kind of written about this quite a bit, of how she would get onto projects that were already essentially half done and kind of have to fill in the blanks. And I think that's kind of the...
So MacGyver it together.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the tragedy of being a proper sort of narrative writer. But the other issue is that I think writers become this marketing tool, and as opposed to this person who is there to basically make a game good.
Rather than being a job, it becomes a kind of brand affiliation thing.
Yeah, and you see a lot of people who are like, we got this guy who made this book and it was on the bestseller list, and now he's making our game, and it's like, that's awesome, never read the book, but okay, I guess it's going to be good. And it doesn't fucking matter, because these are people who don't, they don't play games, they don't know it. And I think that even just having a basic understanding of programming will make you a better narrative writer. And if you don't have that, if you're just some schmuck off the street who wrote like a really good, possibly fantasy book.
Some schmuck of a successful...
I still remember...
Yeah, some idiot with his dragon book. Then, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. You just need to be, you need to know games.
I still remember the height of kind of the bro dude game culture money wagon when... for Modern Warfare 2, it was like Infinity Ward, like after just having their egos exploded by the success of the first game. We're just like, yeah, we're making the second game, and we've got in this writer, he's like one of the lead writers from, I think it was like CSI or something. It's written by this guy, and it was clear, like when you looked at what the game was and what the story in the game was, it was clear that they had this guy coming in and going, oh, it's a writer from CSI, come in. Well, we've got this story here, and this is what happens. It's got this thing. It's got this nuclear rockets in the submarine, and this guy must have just been like, yeah, this great, yeah, and just being like, you get the impression that a lot of those Hollywood dudes who got brought in on big projects were just like, take the money and nod when all of these basically kind of overgrown kids tell you their story about how nuclear missiles get fired from submarines into space and then detonated above America, and they just go, yeah, sounds great.
Cool,
When's that check coming? Is it going to be next week or this week? I don't know. You just get the impression it's like, was this written?
I can imagine that.
Was this written by them, or was it just somebody... Because if I didn't know much about the games, I didn't really care about it, and somebody was like, we really want you to come and do this, I just totally... If somebody had decided what the story was, I'd just be like, nod, tweak it up a bit. Cha-ching!
Yeah, exactly. No one's going to pay attention because it's a video game. It's fine.
Yeah, the thing is, most of my favorite narrative video games, they're not written by authors. No. They're written by people who basically just game designers who like and understand video games, but also have a basic understanding of narrative structure. And if you have those two things, I mean, it is surprisingly rare to get those two things together. Yeah.
I would like to write video games someday.
I would like to do that too.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Is it secretly what we all want to do?
I think so.
Good.
I give it a
no
punt.
Competition.
I don't know if I want to do it. I give it a punt.
It's like a mixture of my two favourite things, which is fiction writing and video games.
It would have to be the right thing, I think. If somebody got in touch with me and they were like, I think it would probably have to be something, I don't know, a comedy thing or something. I don't know. If somebody was like, we're doing this video and we want it to be genuinely funny. Punk? I haven't. It's on my list because I've heard Jazz Punk is genuinely very funny.
Extremely funny. Really absurdist game. It's practically free. I think it's like a few quid.
You read it?
I had the name in my head a minute ago and it's gone. But I think he had a history in comedy.
But yeah, I've been really impressed by like the comedy games in the past few years. Like I've heard that's amazing. It's on my list, and the Stanley Parable was just genius. And if somebody said to me, "We're making this, we want it to be really funny," I'd be like, I'd probably hop on that because I think I could do that. But if somebody was like, "We're making this game, we need to have a great story," I'd be like, I don't know, my stories are probably quite like cliched and shit.
And that's the thing. I would be much more interested if anyone's looking to hire. I'd be much more interested in doing dialogue stuff. Because just say it.
The LinkedIn special of that.
That's Emily Guerra.
No, dialogue is something that is like And if you understand games as well, that's something that often gets a bit butchered. Dialogue and exposition.
Okay, so I'm playing Persona at the moment. Something that's really frustrating me about it is that I can see where the translation is wrong. Mm-hmm. I can just see where it's not right because I lived in Japan for a while. I speak Japanese.
You can do language.
I'm not like mega good at Japanese or anything, but I can speak it. And the things that are wrong are things that I learned not to do in university when translating from Japanese. And it's like did your translators not learn these basic things about translation that you shouldn't do? Because it's frustrating because I just feel like if someone had given, obviously me, or someone like me, just somebody who can kind of, who has a passion for games and that, if somebody had given the script to someone who could have just tidied it up, it would have been just 10% better, and that 10% would have elevated it from really, really good to great. Yeah. And I see that a lot. I used to see it a lot in the PS2 days.
Oh,
when
God, yeah.
Lots of games were translated quite averagely or poorly, and back then it used to really, really irritate me. And this game could be really interesting if you just translated it.
The sad thing is, like having worked on that side of the industry, it just comes down to admin. It's just a case of like that is just they've made the game's already made. The process of getting people to then translate and localize, it's like basically the localization is almost by many companies, well, back in the day especially, was treated in the same way as like who's going to ship it.
Yeah, it was outsourced to agencies.
It's like it doesn't matter.
Nintendo has a brilliant localization department, Treehouse. They have just a fantastic localization department. And whenever I play a Nintendo game, it reminds me how good a lot of these really fantastic Japanese games could be.
Square Enix are pretty good as well. Like the stuff they did, I remember just being blown away by Dragon Quest VIII when it's like it had loads of English accents. It was fully voice acted, and it had
they actually had a really huge localization department in Europe.
And it was like, this is incredible. All the characters have not only got like localized like British accents from around Britain that were actually genuinely quite good, but even the dialogue had been written like to fit that, and it was like, this isn't a shit job.
It is good, yeah. I mean, maybe what I want to be is an editor. Video game script editor. I can do that. I can definitely edit.
It'll be interesting to see like how much more like stuff gets put into that, because you talked about like obviously authors aren't the right people for this, but you often end up getting that. It's why it doesn't seem to me to be a coincidence that so many RPG style games end up having lots of books you can pick up and read. And it's like, I know people like some of that stuff, but I just feel like it's just like sometimes it's just like, oh, somebody wanted to do loads of writing, didn't they?
Somebody had to justify their existence.
Hundreds of different books, and I don't know, it's alright if they're really well written. But
sometimes you'd get one that was great,
rubbish.
and sometimes they were terrible.
Yeah,
I thought in the Fallout is a game to go on about Fallout again, but that was really well written. It's funny. It was understated. It was dark. It was really well
I guess
written.
the difference was with like those games, like I won't bang on about them again because you're right. I bang on about the same games too often. But I guess the whole thing was with the core design of those games, because it was so much based on writing.
It just text.
When they hired the people, like a big part of their budget, which wasn't that big anyway, would have been like writers. They'd be like, right, let's plan Fallout 2. What do we need?
People to animate a hand.
Yeah, like Fallout 2. What do we need? Artists. Okay, what else do we need? Writers. It wouldn't be like animators and then like CGI people, textures, specialists, and then like sound. It would be like writing was one of the most important things, and it has fallen off a little bit, but yeah.
The Phoenix Wright games are also very well translated. They're funny.
They are.
They're very well
translated. As we talked, I think in the past, they do a really good job of pretending It might be me talking to Joe about this, actually. They do a really good
I
job
remember we were first
pretending that it's in America.
Yeah, it's really mean.
Despite the fact
Everyone's
it's like-
they're eating an onigiri. It's like, this is my sandwich. That's like made of rice.
It's like, that's not a sandwich.
Yeah, it's so funny. And they're always talking about the sidewalk and stuff. And it's like, you're clearly... There's a brilliant bit. Was it the third one where they're literally in like a Japanese mountain shrine and they're like, this is weird. What's going on with this
Yeah, they're like,
church?
what's this weird shrine about? And they're like, oh, it's just a thing.
It's in the Colorado mountains or some shit. I don't know. It's funny. And then the one of the things that's good about Persona 4 is it's about Japanese teenagers in a high school set in Japan. They don't bother. They just leave in a bunch of random Japanese words and phrases. They leave it in. They're like, there's no point trying to just pretend this is set in an American high school when it quite blatantly isn't on every level. So they actually, teach you, like if you didn't know about, if you didn't know anything about Japanese culture, it would teach you loads, which is cool.
That's what I quite liked about Catherine. It taught me about... main thing I learned about that.
Oh.
Yeah, I learned loads about relationships. Don't fuck demons. Spoilers. And mainly that rum and coke is called Cuba Libre.
Yeah.
But hey, it's not often I learn things from games these days because I learned
It's
about.
always good to know.
I learned what all the different shapes of swords were years ago.
It just reminded me how much I loved Catherine. Was that 2010 or 2011 for us? I think it was February 2011. That was the best year of games ever. I loved that year.
It was a good game.
Skyrim, Dark Souls, Catherine. There was a lot of other smaller
My
stuff.
trousers are vibrating like a bastard. Where's my phone?
What? Just because I started talking about Skyrim?
Oh, Skyrim! Oh, I love it. I don't even like it that much. It's all right. No, it's good. 2011.
Not trouser vibration levels.
Catherine was really good. I was expecting it to really dislike it.
I loved it so much.
And I didn't like the game. But I love the rest of it.
I really enjoyed
the puzzle bits. I liked because I played it on easy, and my brain kind of was able to work out how to do it, so it wasn't too much trouble. But the rest of it in between, I loved that it wasn't a game about like you being like. It wasn't like what decision you're going to make for your character.
No, it was.
It was
like,
mainly in between, just being like. I loved it. It made you feel dirty in a fun
and bad.
way.
It made you feel like a terrible emerging adult person who can't properly
it would just be like this
run
thing
their
of
life.
like,
It was
hey,
great.
you just play this bit of the game, and it'd just be like. Do you ever think it's acceptable to cheat on someone? And it's like, this is just a game asking you a question. Like, it's not like, do you think Vincent, was you think it'd be acceptable for Vincent to cheat? It's like, it's just asking you. And then you answer the question and it tells you the percentage of people who've answered.
That was very revealing. I was playing that with my partner in the room and I was like, can you leave the room, please? These questions? Because you hover over the button, you're like, is this going to cause an argument?
I don't know. I think because of the nature of the narrative, because the story was all about fidelity and stuff. For
and growing up,
reason,
it was about not growing up as in going from a teenager to a young person, but becoming a young person to like a proper adult,
like
functioning member of society, adult, which is something that a lot of people playing games are in their late 20s now, and that's something we're all thinking about a lot.
I felt really compelled to tell the truth. Which is weird.
Yeah,
I wasn't just like, oh, whatever. I was like, some of them I really sat and thought about.
Because it really asked you properly.
And it's just like...
It was diving into what you really... And it helped because I think that was so thematically brilliant because the game was about what it's like to think about what you want from life and what it's like to think about being a grown-up and maybe leaving some of the stuff you used to do behind and maybe settling down and all that. And it's asking you, like, straight up, like, how do you feel about all of these themes that we're talking about in this game? But without being super obvious.
That's mental, because if a friend of mine in the pub asked me that, like, if it wasn't somebody I knew very well, I'd probably just be really flippant and just ignore it. But like a fucking piece of data printed to a plastic disc asks me, and I stop and I think really carefully about what's the truth. That's mad.
I think I'm going to go home and play Catherine.
It's really mad. It is a good game, but you have to... I recommend playing it on easy because
I finished it on hard. I finished it 3 times.
You're insane, Keza.
Yeah,
you're insane.
It was. I finished it in 2 days. I just got obsessed with it. I do this.
You're mad.
I got obsessed with it, finished it, started again on hard. I finished it on easy and then normal, and I got halfway through hard actually, and then I was like, do you know what, I don't need to play this
Good
game.
lord.
But I did love it.
That's genuinely mad.
Yeah, I know.
And on that bombshell, thank you very much for joining us, guys, on Dark Souls again. Have you got anything you'd like to plug, anybody? Or can no one be bothered? Apart
Not
from
particularly.
LinkedIn. Hires all those writers.
There's some very, very good websites on the internet that are about video games, among them Kotaku and Polygon.
And Polygon.
Yes, both
alright.
got some pretty great people writing for them.
There's
so
also a
go and
website
look
called
at that.
YouTube.
Yes.
Mostly full
I've heard
of
about
scumbags. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.